Hello. Welcome to Matters of DeCorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. A villain, by definition, is a literary device. The dictionary definition of a villain has them as the character whose evil intents and actions motivate the heroes. That's it. That's all we get to define what a villain is, defined entirely by the fact that their existence and their desires motivates everyone else. A villain can't exist in a vacuum. A villain needs the existence of a hero to be a villain. We have romanticized the villain a certain amount with the comic book culture and whatnot. Some of the villains in Batman are more interesting than Batman. In all the comic books, one superhero is going to generate a rogues gallery of 10, 15, 20 villains, 5 or 6 regular villains, and then this constant stream of villains coming in and out, because a villain has to be defeated. A villain may occasionally win, but in doing so only inspire other heroes or the original hero to come back for a triumphant return. There are occasional instances of this not being the case, comic books being what they are and writing being what it is sometimes. From a game master's perspective, this means that if you have a big bad in your campaign, if there is an overarching villain, no matter how much time or thought or effort you're putting into them, what that character is there to do is give the heroes a reason to do something. This introduces a morality to the game. I can say from some experience, if you do not introduce a reason for the characters in a game to be the good guys, i.e. a villain, or some situation that requires them to operate on the good side of the moral spectrum, operating for the benefit of others, perhaps at the sacrifice of themselves, they're not going to go there. They will more often than not go there. Classic Dungeons and Dragons, your old school role-playing games, your characters are more often going to fall into the good alignments, unless the guy really wants to play an assassin, in which case you'll have some evil characters. But the party has something to act against. Things didn't stay that way. As role-playing games matured as a literary form and an activity, and more people got involved, every group has that player, has that, what if I play the bad guy? Can I secretly be a bad guy? Can I backstab the party leader and take all the loot and run? That's not a villain. That's a foil. That's a complication. It's an anti-hero at best, because the party should still theoretically have other things to deal with, unless that character comes full out as, this is what I have done, or behind the scenes is orchestrating all of the bad things that the other characters have to deal with. That was a fun campaign. That character isn't motivating the rest of the party. Their evil intentions and actions are not creating the motivations for the other characters. Sometimes you're running a role-playing game. This has happened to me. It has happened to friends of mine. It has happened no matter what side of the table I was on. I have witnessed this happen to parties in front of me as I am game mastering. I have been a party to it as a party who was being game mastered. It's a sandbox situation. There's no villain. Do what you're going to do. Make the characters you're going to make, and we'll see what happens in this world I've created. There isn't a clear storyline. There's stuff you need to go out and explore, and eventually you'll find the stuff. And those characters, they become someone else's villain. Those characters generate such a quantity of evil intentions and actions that other characters need to come into existence to stop them. My friend Josh was running a game on our Wednesday night group, Dragon Star. He adapted the classic Dragon Star setting of Dungeons and Dragons in space to the Victory system, which worked really, really well. I was happy with how my system performed there. But while there's a lot for us to explore, we were bumpkins on a planet in the corner of nowhere with primitive technology as though we were just a D&D game, and there were little smatterings of high tech around us, and we were not good people. Okay. I almost had to amend that, but no, I do not. None of the party members in the first run of characters were good people. That's where I played Gelt as a fantasy assassin magic user. That's my friend Wayne played Moss, a raven form Kinku bird person who was a master lawyer with a raven's stereotypical greed for pretty things and by extension money. Max played Corvair, a griffin form character who was so inherently arrogant that he would not permit anyone around him to exceed his known abilities. If there was a contest, he had to be in it, he had to win it, he had to crush the people involved, and he had to make sure everyone knew he got the prize. My son Andrew was playing Vance, an archer who, well, okay, I say archer, but he was kind of just a murder hobo. He was a grand murder hobo. He had a special ability that allowed him to summon weapons from nowhere in a burst of light, an angel song, and he never hit someone with the same weapon twice. He would swing a weapon at someone, it would miss. He would try a different weapon, it would miss. He'd try another weapon, it hit. He would try another weapon just to see how his weapons worked out. He pumped up his abilities to do damage to such a degree that we had to be careful when he fired his bow because he might cause collateral damage with it. That's the party that started out. Moss was a rogue type and lawyer. Gelt was an assassin and the party's butler. Vance was a clear fighter. Corsair was a fighter and craftsman. It could have gelled into a party that had a common goal towards defeating a villain, if there had been a villain. All of these characters had their own sets of motivations, which were pride and greed and wrath, and we were like a cut down version of the 7 deadly sins, just looking around for lust and gluttony, and those were kind of on the way. Our friend Al, who missed the first session, I believe, made a paladin, a holy warrior dedicated to the church and in service of his religion. A religion which in this setting had not heard from their god in several thousand years. In fact, the symbol of the god was an empty holy symbol symbolizing that the god had stepped away for a bit, but his will still needed to be abided by according to the church, whatnot. There was a pope to this religion who basically got to declare what he wanted to be as faith as faith. But Al's character served it diligently and faithfully. So when Al's character first showed up, we had just destroyed a monastery. The monastery was being bad. We were just tracking down a missing caravan, and the missing caravan's trail led to the monastery, and the monastery was being terribly, terribly unhelpful. And we went in to pursue a course of investigation, and while Gelt was torturing and stabbing the person most likely responsible for the caravan disappearance, Corvair, Moss, and Vance started a bar fight in the middle of the monastery and destroyed all of... Okay, Corvair convinced Moss that one of the monks had attacked him. And it was on from there. So when Al's holy warriors showed up, we were burying the monks in the monastery because they had been bad. As it turns out, after the fact, we discovered they had actually been bad. I have to wonder how much of that was pre-planned and how much of that was Josh trying to salvage some moral compass point for the group. By then, it was way too late. This game went on for a while, Al's character trying to catch up and turning into a monster. Not a claws and fangs, tail and wings having variety of monster, but the human variety, which is far, far worse. Deciding that he needed to murder all of Corvair's people and stealing a spaceship and going on an attack run against their helpless villages. Until the assassin got hired to kill him. I got hired to kill 3 of Al's characters. And because of how my character's merits and flaws were arranged, he kind of had to take contracts if they were offered in good faith. As this campaign went along, we determined at some point in time we were going to have to revisit this world with different characters who would be fighting against the characters we were currently playing. That party, that was a party of villains. They were going to rise to power and build structures and corrupt what was left of the Star Empire around them and take over huge sections of the galaxy, and someone was going to have to stop them. Someone was going to have to stop them. We built a villainous empire. Eventually, we found villains, but they weren't terribly impressive to us, so we removed them from play, took their stuff, and moved on. You have to be careful with player characters. There's nothing wrong with a campaign like that, by the way. If that is the kind of campaign you want to run, it's kind of simple. Have a rich world full of stuff that is breakable and killable and things that are just questionable enough so that you can convince yourself you're doing the right thing at first. And then don't tell your player characters what to do in it. Have a couple of things happen to them, create some events, and then let them follow through and draw their own conclusions. They'll probably turn bad. You might have a better party than that. I don't personally have a propensity. Okay, I do have a bit of a propensity towards characters having villainous traits. That being that they have evil motivations and actions that will motivate other people. Because it's fun. That is one form of enjoyment I get. Not all of my characters villains. I've played perfectly virtuous characters. I've played questionably virtuous characters. But all in all, a game master has a very difficult job. On top of all the other stuff they got to do. On top of being the eyes, ears, nose, taste buds, and fingertips of everyone in that party. Everyone there relies on the game master to tell them what their characters see, hear, smell, taste, touch. What their magical or psionic senses bring to them. That's all got to come out of the game master's head. That's not usually written down. You walk into a bar, there is someone serving drinks and 5 or 6 patrons sitting at tables. What's it smell like? How does the beer taste? Is it good quality beer? Is there food? Can I smell something cooking in the back? Is this a new table, or has this table been around for a while? That's not in the adventure. No one has ever written that down. If they did, it would be the longest, thickest, most boring adventure to read ever, and no game master could probably run it, because that's too much information to take in. But that's what you're going to be asked. That's just going to come out. It might not. Chances are it is. If you're not prepared to answer those questions, they're absolutely going to be asked. Players are amazing at asking questions that you don't have the answer to. I answer those questions. And sometimes those answers do not make sense, because I'm coming up with stuff off the top of my head. And someone might catch an inconsistency. It's like, wait, this is a brand new table, but there are a lot of marks on the bottom of it. How does that happen? And I look at them with a raised eyebrow and go, that's a really good question. How do you think it happened? Never let them think you didn't intend something. Makes you seem like a genius. But on top of all these other things that a game master has to be able to do, you have to have a really compelling villain. And you have to play them compellingly. You can have this shadowy overlord that is off in the mountains 100 miles away, orchestrating stuff with puppet strings, and if those puppet strings are not immediately pulling daggers against the throats of the player characters, they're going to ignore him. They don't care about the shadowy lord over there. They care about the bag of gold that's in the back pocket of that guy on this side of the bar, and can I roll it to take his pants? A villain needs to have some immediacy. First game, first moment, even maybe if you're session 0 before the game happens, there needs to be some suggestions of what this villain is and what this villain can do. And they need to be terrifying. They need to be, you cannot beat this villain right now. These are the kinds of things that this villain is doing. These are the kinds of things he's been known to do. And you could go fight him right now, but you would die. My friend Mike, in the Manhattan Beach game, ran a game in the Star Wars Saga edition. The system was not good. The game was excellent, because Mike was running it. Where we faced a Sith in the first episode, and he was threatening party members. I was playing a Jedi. I stepped up, and Mike made it quite clear. You know, my force senses were telling me this. What little experience my first level character had were telling me this was not a fight I could win. This was not a heroically sacrifice yourself for your friends moment. This was a you die, everyone dies. If you stand and face him, it does not go well. You cannot win this fight. And my character distracted him for a moment and ran. That was all I could do. I could get a moment of distraction, and then I ran. That villain shaped the party. That villain became the motivation for other members of the party to plan their fall to the dark side. I'm going to have to fall to the dark side to kill this villain. That's the only way we can do it. I'm never going to get enough power to kill this villain. My character, that formed an arc for my character. It was not one that anyone else saw. Because most of my abilities, Saga Edition did not allow for terribly good character progression. It was a test bed for D&D 4th edition mechanics, so it worked as well with what it had to work with as it could. So the majority of my abilities did not change over the next 10, 12 levels. Not visibly. So my character wasn't the fighter. He was the Jedi, yeah, but he was more of the finesse Jedi, using diplomacy and communication. But I put all of my advancement into my defense in combat. Just about every last bit of it. Every chance I got to make my character better able to defend themselves, I used. So, when the climactic battle with that villain came, and it came time for who is going to go, am I going to fall to the dark side to face this character? Am I going to have to throw my fall to the dark side to face this character? My character went and fought him to a standstill on the Death Star just before it exploded. Knowing that was what was going to happen, time travel was involved, my character could not be hit if he wasn't attacking at that point in time. So I fought an entirely defensive battle against this person I had no chance of when the game started. Character arc entirely formed by that villain who died with the character. Kind of glorious. That's what power a good villain has. There were other things happening in the story. There were other plot arcs and other story arcs, and there were other things for the characters to do, but that villain always hung out in the back of our mind. Every so often he would show up, or we'd be on his trail and we'd catch just a little bit of him, but every step of the way, what are we going to have to do to beat this guy, and am I willing to pay that price, was asked by every member of the party. That's a villain. A villain's going to happen in your campaign. A villain is going to happen in your campaign. If you do not offer one, he's going to come from the other side of the table. And those are the most terrifying kinds. It might be the whole party. The whole party might just turn. Do a moral pivot, and suddenly you are looking at a group of people who are evil and determined to do bad things. And you got to run that. Or, at that point in time, you can, if you're not comfortable with that, you can always step away. Like, would someone else like to run this at this point in time? Because that's not the kind of game I wanted to run. You could try to offer a bigger villain than them, and that becomes much more difficult at this point in time because they've gotten the taste. And once a party has tasted what it feels like to be the bad guy, that's a hard taste to get out of their mouth, even with a bigger, worse bad guy, because you're going to have a hard time coming up with anything worse than an entire group of PCs gone bad. PCs are the most destructive force in the universe. Or one of them is going to go bad, and that can work very well, especially if they go bad quietly. On the surface, operating along with the rest of the party, but between games, calling the game master and sending emails and notes. This is what I'm doing in the background while everyone else thinks I'm still a good guy. That is gold. That takes what a game master has thrown down and gives the game master extra ammo, extra stuff, and you don't have to write a villain because you've got someone else volunteering to write the villain for you. And when that reveal comes, that is crushing and dramatic, and emotions spike. And everyone has to walk around and laugh for a couple of minutes because no one saw that coming. That was awesome. I've talked before about the qualities of villains, what makes a good villain. Sometimes, however, the best villain you can find in your campaign is the one that you, as the game master, find in your campaign as you go along. Josh didn't mind that we all turned evil in the Dragonstar game. It was fascinating to watch. I ran that game for a little while after the turn, the beginning of the Empire being built, how they were going to gather all their forces and go do terrible things. And they were terrible things. And we role-played how an evil empire started by a group of villains with common cause happened. Yeah, we're going to get back to that. That is an entire galaxy of badness that someone is going to have to go and do something about. And that is never a bad thing. That is a great game in the future. Flesh some things out, build some spaceships, make some new characters, look at the situation, and I don't know who's going to run it. Josh can run it, I could run it. Anyone in that group could actually take a chunk, or we could take turns running that. Oh my gosh. Here's a concept. Off the top of my head, coffee's working. So you have, Josh eventually made up a character for the campaign as well. A vacuum wasp, I think, because his vacuum wasp characters are astonishing, and these human-sized wasps that are just insane natural pilots. What if you have a party of people going after this, and each one of us runs a session or two or a short story arc where our original character is the villain that they are facing off against. A Gelt section, a Moss section, a Corvair section, where we deal with a section of the galaxy that has been taken by that particular person and having to get to that person, maybe not take that villain down, but certainly chase them off from where they have control. And then in the last session, we run the villain group having gotten together to fight these heroes, and the heroes fighting the villain group at the same time. That session would take a day and would be insane. It would be this multiple personality, different voices, nip and tuck, and it would be almost more an element of storytelling, but the dice rolls would tell us who won. Okay, I'm going to suggest that to the group. Well, thank you for following me along with this particular rant through villainy. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. If you have not subscribed to my channel yet, why not? My channel is awesome. Go ahead and hit the subscribe button. If you hit the subscribe button, make sure you hit the little notification bell so that you're alerted when my videos become available. Have your own experiences with villainy in a role-playing game as a villain or as someone motivated by one? Something else you want to hear me to talk about? Another subject you'd like to hear me cover? Leave me a comment. I will love getting a comment. You will love leaving me one. If you'd like to help the channel in a substantial manner, I invite you to hit me up my Patreon page, www.patreon.com/ScottCorum, and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you very much for watching. I'm Scott Corum, this is What Has Mattered to Me, and I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.